The parchment crackled beneath Yorick Eldon's trembling fingers, its ancient yellow surface marred by symbols he dared not comprehend. Candlelight danced across the stone walls of the monastery library, casting long shadows that seemed to watch his every move. Outside, a bitter January wind howled through the cloisters of St. Clement's Abbey, but inside, Yorick burnt with feverish determination. "Brother Yorick," came a stern voice. "The hour grows late." Yorick hastily covered the forbidden text with a permitted volume of theological commentary. "Forgiveness, Brother Ambrose. I lost track of time in my studies." Brother Ambrose, the elderly librarian, narrowed his eyes. "The abbot grows concerned about your enthusiasms. Remember that curiosity is the path that leads many souls astray." "I seek only to understand God's creation more deeply," Yorick replied, lowering his eyes in practiced humility. When the old monk finally shuffled away, Yorick exhaled quietly. At 32 years of age, after 15 years of monastic life, he had mastered the art of appearing pious while harboring dangerous questions. The manuscripts he truly studied were hidden beneath floorboards in his cell, fragments of ancient alchemical wisdom that the Church had deemed heretical. Knowledge is not sin, he reminded himself, though the doubt lingered. As a scholar monk, his duty was to preserve the faith, not question it. Yet since boyhood, he had been drawn to the mysteries of the natural world, how metals transformed, how plants healed, how the stars moved in their celestial dance. These questions had driven him to the monastery, believing that true wisdom lay in sacred texts. Instead, he found rigid doctrine that stifled inquiry. The monastery bells tolled Compline, the final prayer of the day. Yorick carefully returned the forbidden text to its hiding place behind a loose stone in the wall. He had discovered this cache of alchemical manuscripts 3 months prior, works that should have been burned centuries ago but had somehow survived, concealed by some long-dead monk with curiosities similar to his own. These forbidden archives had become his obsession, his secret sin. With each forbidden page, Yorick felt himself drifting further from the life of devotion he had pledged to live. Yet he could not stop. There was truth in these ancient words, truth the Church feared. "My duty is to God, not to men who claim to speak for him," Yorick thought, though the justification felt hollow in the midnight quiet of his conscience. As winter deepened into February, Yorick grew more careful, studying only during the darkest hours. His fellow monks noticed his pallor, the dark circles beneath his eyes, but attributed them to excessive prayer and fasting, signs of devotion rather than heresy. Then came the day that would forever alter the course of his life. The abbot announced that Lady Eleanor of Westshire had donated a collection of ancient texts to the monastery, requiring a skilled copyist to catalogue them before they joined the library. Yorick, known for his meticulous hand, was assigned the task. "You are to work with Lady Eleanor's scholar," the abbot instructed. "A woman of learning who serves her household. I need not remind you of the proprieties." Yorick bowed his head. "I shall comport myself with all due modesty, Father Abbot." The following morning, a light carriage bearing the Westshire crest arrived at the monastery gates. From it emerged a slight figure in a modest blue gown, her face partially concealed by a linen wimple. The woman was presented to Yorick in the anteroom of the library, a space deemed appropriate for necessary interaction between a monk and a woman. "Brother Yorick Eldon, this is Mistress Fiona Jarrow, scholar to the Lady Eleanor," said Brother Ambrose before leaving them in the company of a deaf old monk who served as chaperone. Fiona Jarrow lifted her gaze, and Yorick found himself looking into eyes of startling intelligence, hazel eyes that regarded him with cautious assessment. "Brother Yorick," she said, her voice low and measured. "Lady Eleanor speaks highly of your skill with ancient texts." "Her ladyship is generous in her estimation," Yorick replied, maintaining a proper distance. "Shall we examine the collection?" The woman nodded, gesturing to the wooden chest that had been brought in. These manuscripts came from Lady Eleanor's late husband's family. Some are quite old, from Byzantine territories and beyond. As Yorick opened the chest, his heart nearly stopped. Beneath commonplace volumes of history and natural philosophy lay texts he recognized immediately, alchemical works similar to those he had been studying in secret. His eyes darted to Fiona's face, finding there not innocence but knowing caution. "These will require careful cataloguing," he said carefully. "Some may contain material of a sensitive nature." "Indeed," Fiona replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Lady Eleanor wishes such texts to be preserved, not destroyed. She believes knowledge should not perish, even when it challenges our understanding." Something in her tone made Yorick's pulse quicken. This was the moment his life pivoted, the instant when duty to doctrine clashed irreconcilably with his thirst for truth. In Fiona Jarrow's steady gaze, he recognized a kindred spirit, someone who also lived within the constraints of their station while harboring dangerous thoughts. For 3 weeks, they worked together in the anteroom, carefully sorting the manuscripts. The deaf monk dozed in the corner, oblivious to their whispered conversations that strayed far beyond the texts before them. Fiona, he learned, had been educated alongside Lady Eleanor since childhood, her father having been the lady's own tutor. When her father died, Lady Eleanor kept Fiona as her personal scholar and confidant. "My position is unusual," she admitted. "Neither servant nor noble permitted learning but expected to hide it. I am grateful to Lady Eleanor, yet sometimes I wonder what life might have been had I been born a man. And I sometimes wonder what might have been had I not taken vows," Yorick confessed, surprising himself with his honesty. "The Church has preserved much knowledge, but it also fears it." "Fear is the enemy of wisdom," Fiona said, her fingers brushing against his as she passed him a manuscript. The brief contact sent an unexpected warmth through his hand. As March arrived with its hesitant spring, Yorick found himself living for their daily meetings. They developed a system, innocuous theological texts arranged openly on the table, while the more dangerous alchemical works were examined in whispers, hidden behind larger volumes when Brother Ambrose made his frequent, suspicious visits. "Look here," Fiona murmured one afternoon, pointing to a diagram in a text supposedly from Alexandria. "This speaks of transmutation not just of metals, but of understanding. The alchemist's true work is not to create gold from lead, but wisdom from ignorance." Yorick leaned closer than propriety allowed. "The Church condemns such ideas as seeking godlike power, but what if the ancients merely sought to understand God's creation more fully? Perhaps that is why these texts survive despite attempts to destroy them," she said. "Truth has its own protection." Their fingers touched again, lingering this time. Yorick knew he should withdraw his hand, but could not. In that moment of connection, he felt a current of understanding that transcended the physical, a recognition of two minds equally hungry for forbidden knowledge. That night, alone in his cell, Yorick knelt in prayer not for forgiveness, but for guidance. The vows he had taken as a youth seemed increasingly like chains rather than wings. For 15 years, he had believed his duty to God required submission to the Church's authority. Now, with each passing day in Fiona's company, he questioned whether God's truth might be larger than what the abbots and bishops proclaimed. "Is it my duty to confine my mind within these walls," he wondered, "or to seek truth wherever it may lead?" As their work progressed, Yorick and Fiona discovered among the texts a set of encrypted letters, correspondence between alchemists from different parts of Christendom. Using knowledge from the forbidden archives Yorick had previously discovered, they began to decipher these communications. "It speaks of a network," Fiona whispered one rain-soaked April morning. "Scholars in Paris, Oxford, Toledo, all sharing discoveries in secret, preserving ancient wisdom while appearing to conform to church doctrine. A hidden brotherhood of knowledge," Yorick said, eyes wide. existing beneath the very nose of authority. And sisterhood, Fiona added with a small smile. Look here, this letter mentions women practitioners in Salerno and Montpellier. Their excitement grew as they uncovered more evidence of this secret community of scholars. According to the letters, these alchemists were not merely seeking the philosopher's stone or the elixir of life, they were preserving astronomical observations, medical knowledge, and philosophical traditions that predated Christianity itself. As April yielded to May, their work neared completion, and with it came the looming separation. Neither spoke of it, though the knowledge weighed heavily between them. During their final week together, they worked with desperate efficiency, copying key passages from the most dangerous texts before they would be sealed away in the monastery library, accessible only to the most senior monks. On their last afternoon, as sunlight streamed through the narrow windows, Fiona pressed a small packet of folded parchment into Yorick's hand. Lady Eleanor invites selected scholars to her estate for philosophical discussions, she whispered. These are directions, should you ever find yourself able to visit. Yorick closed his fingers around the parchment, knowing he could never accept such an invitation without abandoning his vows. I cannot, I ask nothing, Fiona said quickly. Only that you keep this, as a reminder that the world of learning extends beyond these walls. That night, after Compline, Yorick sat alone in his cell, the invitation burning in his hand like a coal. 15 years of monastic discipline warned him to destroy it, to confess his inappropriate attachment to this woman scholar, to recommit himself to his vows. Instead, he found himself gathering the most precious of his secret manuscripts. By midnight, he had made his decision. He would leave before dawn, abandoning the only life he had known as an adult. The thought terrified him, yet for the first time in years, he felt alive with purpose. As he prepared to slip away in the pre-dawn darkness, Brother Ambrose appeared in his doorway. I knew it would come to this, the old librarian said sadly. I have watched you, Brother Yorick. Your heart has never truly belonged to God. Yorick stood frozen, his small bundle of possessions condemning him. My heart belongs to truth, he said finally. Is that not also God's domain? Heresy, Brother Ambrose hissed. I found your hiding place behind the stone. The abbot has been informed. Guards are coming to take you for questioning. The blood drained from Yorick's face. Accusations of heresy could lead to imprisonment or worse. He had delayed his departure too long. Brother Ambrose, we have prayed together for 15 years, Yorick pleaded. Grant me this one mercy, let me leave quietly. I seek no harm to the Church, only freedom to pursue knowledge. The old man's face remained impassive. You should have thought of consequences before corrupting your soul with forbidden texts. He turned to call for help. In desperation, Yorick grabbed the only weapon at hand, a heavy wooden crucifix that hung on his wall. With a silent prayer for forgiveness, he struck the old monk, watching in horror as Ambrose collapsed unconscious but breathing. There was no choice now. Yorick fled through the night, his monk's habit marking him as clearly as a brand. By dawn, he had reached a small village 10 miles from the monastery. There, he traded his rosary for rough peasant clothes and continued eastward toward Westshire, Fiona's directions clutched in his trembling hand. For 3 days, he traveled through forests and fields, avoiding main roads and villages where monks from St. Clement's might have sent word. Hunger and exposure weakened him, and the certainty of damnation weighed on his conscience. He had struck a man of God, abandoned his vows, acts that could condemn his immortal soul. Yet whenever doubt threatened to overwhelm him, he would read the encrypted notes he had copied from the alchemical texts. Truth is not found in flight from the world, but in penetrating its mysteries. God reveals himself in creation as much as in Scripture. On the 4th day, exhausted and feverish, Yorick finally reached the boundaries of the Westshire estate. He collapsed at the gate, too weak to announce himself properly. When he awoke, he found himself in a small but comfortable chamber, his wounds cleaned and bandaged. "You have caused quite a stir, Brother Yorick," came a voice from the doorway. A stately woman of middle years stood there, richly dressed but with kind eyes. "Or should I simply call you Yorick now?" "Lady Eleanor," he guessed, struggling to sit up. She nodded. "Fiona said you might come someday, though not in such dramatic fashion. Word has reached us that St. Clement's Abbey seeks a fugitive monk accused of heresy and assault." Yorick closed his eyes in shame. "I never intended violence." "Brother Ambrose, is he?" "Alive and well, according to our information, though greatly offended." Lady Eleanor approached his bedside. "Fiona believes you are a man of exceptional intellect and courage. I am inclined to trust her judgment, but I must protect my household." "Are you a danger to us, Yorick Eldon?" "I seek only knowledge," he answered truthfully. "And perhaps a purpose beyond the walls that confined me." Lady Eleanor studied him for a long moment. "Rest today. Tomorrow, if you are stronger, we shall speak further about what that purpose might be." True to her word, the following day Lady Eleanor returned with Fiona beside her. Seeing her outside the formal constraints of the monastery, Yorick was struck anew by her quiet intensity. She wore a simple green gown, her hair partially visible beneath a less restrictive headdress than the severe wimple she had worn at St. Clement's. "You came," she said simply, her voice betraying more emotion than her composed features. "I had nowhere else to go," Yorick admitted. Lady Eleanor observed their exchange with shrewd eyes. "Fiona has told me of your work together, your discovery of the alchemical network that once spanned Christendom. What she may not have told you is that this network still exists, though greatly diminished." Yorick's eyes widened. "You are part of it." "My late husband was," she replied. "After his death, I maintained certain correspondencies. This estate has become something of a sanctuary for those who value knowledge above dogma." Over the following days, as Yorick regained his strength, Lady Eleanor revealed more about her unusual household. Several of her servants were actually scholars in disguise, a gardener who was once a renowned astronomer from Paris, a steward who had studied medicine in Salerno. The church's grip tightens, Lady Eleanor explained as they walked through her extensive herb garden. The Inquisition grows more aggressive each year. Those who ask unpopular questions must find protection where they can. "And you provide this protection at great risk to yourself," Yorick observed. "My husband's name and wealth shield me from casual suspicion," she replied. "And I maintain all proper religious observances. The local priest finds me generously devout." Yorick smiled at her clever navigation of society's constraints. "And Fiona? What is her role in all this?" "Fiona is my greatest treasure," Lady Eleanor said with genuine affection. "She has a mind that comes once in a generation. Her father recognized it when she was still a child. I have given her the freedom to use that mind, within the limits society allows a woman." As May turned to June, Yorick found a place within Lady Eleanor's unusual household. Officially, he became a scribe and tutor for the estate, his monastic background explained as training rather than forsaken vows. To the outside world, he was simply a learned man in Lady Eleanor's employ. In reality, he joined the hidden community of scholars who gathered regularly in a converted barn on the far edge of the estate. There, behind locked doors, they conducted experiments, shared forbidden texts, and debated philosophical questions that would have scandalized the church authorities. And there was Fiona, always Fiona, challenging his thinking, expanding his understanding, becoming the intellectual partner he had never dared hope for. Their connection deepened with each passing day, though both maintained a careful distance, aware of the complex boundaries between them. "Do you regret leaving the monastery?" she asked him one evening as they catalogued a newly arrived collection of Arabic astronomical texts. Yorick considered the question carefully. "I regret the manner of my leaving, the violence against Brother Ambrose. But not the leaving itself." He looked up at her. "The monks speak of finding peace within the cloister walls. I never found it there. I found more peace in these past months of uncertainty than in 15 years of structured devotion." "And your faith?" she asked more quietly. "Changed, not abandoned," he replied. "I believe God gave us minds to seek understanding, not to surrender it." He hesitated before adding, "and hearts to seek connection, not to deny it." Fiona's eyes met his, holding a question neither dared to speak aloud. Their unspoken attachment did not go unnoticed. In late summer, Lady Eleanor summoned Yorick to her private chambers. "You have proven yourself valuable to our community of learning," she said directly. "But I observe that your interest in my household extends beyond scholarly matters." Yorick felt heat rise to his face. "My lady, I assure you," she raised a hand. "No protestations, please. I have eyes, Yorick Eldon. The question is not whether you care for Fiona, but what you intend to do about it." "I have made no declarations," he said carefully. "Nor would I without your blessing. I am a man with no position, no family name, and a dangerous past. I would not presume. Fiona has rejected 3 suitable marriage proposals over the years," Lady Eleanor interrupted. "Men of good standing who offered security and respectability. I never pressed her, understanding that a mind like hers would find little satisfaction in conventional marriage." She walked to the window, looking out over her lands. "But I am not immortal, Yorick. When I am gone, Fiona will need protection. My nephew who inherits this estate may not be as understanding of our unconventional pursuits." Yorick's heart raced as he began to understand her meaning. "Are you suggesting?" "I suggest nothing," Lady Eleanor replied. "I merely observe that there is a small cottage on the southern border of my estate. It has its own garden and access to the forest beyond. It would suit a scholar in residence who might wish to establish a household of his own." That evening, walking with Fiona along the edge of the estate's pond, Yorick found himself struggling for words. She seemed to sense his agitation, waiting patiently as he gathered his thoughts. "Lady Eleanor spoke with me today," he finally said. "About the future." "She spoke with me as well," Fiona replied, her voice carefully neutral. "Then you know she offered me the cottage by the southern woods." Fiona nodded, her eyes on the water's surface where evening light painted golden patterns. "It is a generous offer." "It would be a humble life," Yorick said cautiously. "Far from the comforts you've known here." "I have never valued comfort above purpose," she answered. Then, more softly, "or above love." The word hung between them, finally spoken after months of careful avoidance. "Fiona," Yorick said, taking her hand for the first time outside the context of passing manuscripts or pointing to texts. "I left the monastery seeking knowledge, but I found something I never thought possible. I found you." She turned to him fully then, her hazel eyes bright with unshed tears. "When we worked together at St. Clement's, I recognized something in you, a mind that matched my own. I never dared hope for more. I can offer you little besides that matching mind," he said honestly. "And a heart that has found its purpose in loving you." "It is enough," she whispered. "More than enough." Under Lady Eleanor's protection, they were married at Michaelmas by a parish priest who knew better than to ask too many questions about the groom's background. The small cottage became their sanctuary, a place where they could pursue knowledge together without fear. As autumn deepened into winter, Yorick often thought about the path that had brought him there. The forbidden archives that had first awakened his questioning mind now seemed like mere stepping stones to a greater discovery. The alchemists had sought transformation of base metals into gold, but Yorick had experienced a far more profound transmutation, from isolation to connection, from rigid doctrine to living truth. On Christmas Eve, sitting beside the fire in their cottage, Fiona presented him with a gift, a manuscript bound in new leather. "I've been working on this since we came to the cottage," she explained as he opened it. "It's a compilation of the most important alchemical texts we discovered, with our own observations and commentaries." Yorick turned the pages in wonder, seeing their shared intellectual journey documented in Fiona's precise hand. "This is extraordinary. Knowledge should not remain hidden forever," she said. "One day, perhaps the world will be ready for these truths. Until then, we preserve them." Yorick placed the book carefully on the table and took his wife's hands in his. "The greatest alchemical transformation isn't lead into gold," he said. "It's fear into courage, isolation into connection. The true philosopher's stone is love." Fiona smiled, leaning forward to kiss him gently. "Then we have achieved the great work, haven't we?" Outside their window, snow began to fall, covering the landscape in pristine white. Within the cottage walls, the fire crackled, illuminating two figures bent together over ancient wisdom and new discoveries, their faces alight with the quiet certainty that in finding each other, they had discovered the greatest secret of all.